Welcome to the Beautiful Game Plan podcast, produced by Focus Shift Films and sponsored by Welsh sports fans. I'm your host, Daniel J. Harris. I'm a filmmaker and entrepreneur working across sport, and I'm a huge fan of sports content. This podcast is my chance to meet amazing people who are doing amazing things in the sports content space and to share their stories with you in the hope that it inspires ideas. First series began whilst I was still working as commercial director at Eastleigh Media. Let's dive in and meet our guest. So James, hello, welcome to the show. Tell the people at home who you are and what you do, please.
No problem. Hi all, my name's James Askey and I am Head of Marketing, CRM and Insight at Cardiff City Football Club. Do you want me to go into a bit more there? Or?
No, that's fine. So James, you've recently joined Cardiff City and your experience before that is at the Scarlets, Royal Mint and Credit Safe. What inspired you to kind of bring your experience into football?
So I've been at Cardiff City now for about a year. It's been a fantastic experience. I'm a Cardiff boy, well, Caerphilly boy, raised, so it's close to my heart. It was, I suppose, to answer that question, I go back a little bit from when I was working at the Royal Mint and then jumping over into my first experience of working in sport when I joined Scarlets Rugby. I've always wanted to work in sports since I was a little boy. I'm a massive sports fan, so it was a great opportunity to jump over to that, and then to get the opportunity to work in football, and particularly for Cardiff City, who I've been a fan from since a young boy. I couldn't pass up on that opportunity ultimately, and then I think coming into sports as a bit of previously as an outsider, not working in sports before. It was a bit of it's definitely an eye opener. I think it's extremely fast paced and interesting. You've got to be planned but reactive as you're working in sport. It's a difficult environment, but it's extremely rewarding all at the same time.
Yeah, same as me. I've always been a football fan, always been a fan of sport. And then when you're kind of working in and around like people that you've seen on the screen, it's exciting to be creating content with them and promoting some of the stuff the club's doing. So you put a lot of emphasis on elevating promotion of Cardiff City matches in your time when you've been at the Bluebirds. Can you go into a bit of detail about the importance of the wider fan experience and more specifically, why it needs to be a bigger priority in clubs' marketing strategies?
Yeah, of course. I think particularly right now, in a post-COVID world, cost of living crisis, consumer trends and habits are changing every single day. I think ultimately it's probably more important now than ever before that we have to do this kind of activity. I think, sports has always had a massive following, particularly football. Blessed in that sense. It's very popular, so it's always historically got the big attendances in. But in this day and age, that's becoming a much more competitive landscape. Particularly with younger demographics, they want to engage with sport from afar. They want to engage with it in different ways. So for us, we wanted to try and elevate that, try and get people back to the stadium. Really get people into that experience, which is really, really important as part of sports. And then in terms of what we've done is we wanted to try and connect with fans at a bit more of an emotive level. Ultimately, that's the key thing, to try and get that level of engagement, get fans to the stadium so they can enjoy it. And ultimately, as we all know, as football sports fans, the experience to a match day starts long before the match even starts. We're all excited leading up to the game. So making those events bigger is really important and has shown real benefits for us over the last couple of months.
Yeah, and I think the thing with football is there's so much of it around now. You can engage in football in so many different ways, but there's nothing quite like the match experience. So how do you engage people in digital platforms and sell that match day experience? Kind of, how do you encourage them to get off their phones and get down to the stadium?
Yeah, definitely. It's a challenge. It really is, particularly, like I said, with the younger demographics, who, they tend to enjoy watching sport from afar. But really, I think for us, the big thing was around the imagery, the video content, the things like that we were creating at much more of an emotive level. So a big thing for us was, using match day imagery, those emotive shots of footballers once they've scored goals, those crowd shots, just showing the atmosphere on a match day is extremely important. The other key bits, I suppose, in terms of trying to encourage people to come along is the wider match day experience then. So it's, everything that isn't necessarily happening on the pitch. So it's, the food and the drink, it's the atmosphere with friends when you're there, it's all of the different entertainment that's on before a match. So highlighting and showcasing all of that is extremely important. And we're almost in a blessed sense in this day and age with so many channels at our disposal to reach those consumers, particularly visually. We can really demonstrate that to the fans, and the results have been working on the back of it.
Yeah, and I think the thing with football is, like, Cardiff City's 125 years old next year, isn't it? Do you mean you've got all that history, but the game is very different now to what it was then? There's different match day experiences. There's so many different things you can potentially highlight or draw upon in your kind of creative content, in your marketing strategy. Where do you start with that stuff? Kind of, there's so much to choose from. What's the kind of key elements that you want to start with to engage with your audience?
So for us, we'll probably discuss this a little bit more, but around the whole idea of customer relationship management and understanding that customer journey. So it's really important to understand those initial touch points with the consumer of where they're first going to engage with us, and what is it that will allow them to engage and move them through the journey with us, so that they become ultimately in the longer term lifelong fans ultimately, and hopefully season ticket holders. But for us, we identify that initial touch point as a match day. We obviously want to get new people along to the stadium. We want them to enjoy the experience on the day. But then in terms of getting them to that point, there's so many channels, as you say, that people will engage with us over before that happens, on social media, on the website, on email. There's so many channels out there. So a key thing it really is identifying those big matches throughout the season, the ones that they do grab attention, they are more appealing to an acquisition customer, and then making sure that we're highlighting those and making those events as big as possible. And then when fans are coming on a match day, making sure that experience is as good as possible for them as well. Just expand on that a little bit, really, is with regards to making that event as big as possible. It really is around everything leading up to that match day ultimately, which we've tried a lot with out of home advertising, radio advertising, making our presence known in the city of Cardiff, so that when a match is on, people know it's happening, people are getting excited about it, and people want to come along to that game.
That's fantastic. And like you said, sometimes it's the little things that are better match day experience as well. Like, I know Evan, that works here at Eat Sleep Media and runs the Welsh football fans pages, he took a picture of his curry chips in half a cob at the Merthyr Tydfil, and now that pops up on Sport Bible and all sorts of other places. Something as simple as that being a part of the match day experience can go viral, and you never know what those things are, I suppose, do you?
Yeah, definitely. It's we can do so much from a top level and try and make everything as run smoothly and as effectively as possible. But ultimately, even interactions with the stewards on the day, which we obviously try and encourage through various means, but a positive experience with the steward, just helping a new fan coming along to a game, telling them where to go, where their seat is, what they can expect. That makes a huge difference, and it's those things that you can't always measure those things.
Exactly. And it's not just your digital marketing campaign either then, is it? It's the people that live and breathe the club as well, that you've got to instill that match day experience ethos into as well. And it brings me nicely on to my next question. because you're lucky or unlucky enough to have quite an all-encompassing role. A lot of in-house marketers, do you mean they just got to think about the brief that's in front of them and then they're on to the next? But since you see the bigger picture, can you give us a bit of an insight on the importance of collaboration across departments and what the data might not be showing you?
Yeah, of course. So, yeah, for me, collaboration is everything. Ultimately, particularly from a marketing perspective, understanding multiple people's perspectives is hugely important to elevating and optimizing the best outcome for everyone. Particularly in sports where fans are so passionate about the club and the sport and everything that we do. We need to make sure that we're doing right by them ultimately. So yeah, it's hugely important. We're really lucky at Cardiff City. I work with some fantastic teams and other heads of who run their various departments, and they do a fantastic job to bring it all together. We're not a massive company in terms of thousands of people running the show. We all pull together and we all band together to deliver as best an experience as we can. So yeah, it's hugely important, collaboration, and it ultimately gets us where we need to be.
And I suppose the other thing as well is, like you touched upon it there, if you've got 15,000 people coming to the stadium on a weekend, you've got a variety of different people within that as well. You've got people that have been going for 70 years. You've got people that it's their first game. You've got women, children, men. You've got people that love music, people that love a beer, some people that want to come along just purely for the football. There's so many different types of people that are looking for different types of experience. How do you tackle that in your marketing strategy, trying to appeal to all of those?
It's difficult. It is, because there is so many messages out there. I think a key thing that we do is around identifying the different segments. We identify those personas within the base, then within our fan base around those segments, understanding each of those personas at a more high level, then to understand where we meet them and what content is mostly going to appeal to them. So it really is looking at your campaign planner then really throughout the year to identify, right, these are the games that are going to most appeal to different individuals, and then these are the different messages we need to incorporate into all of our communications out to the fan base to try and appeal to as many of those people as we possibly can. You can't always get every message across, but we try to be as succinct as possible in that content creation to kind of bring that all home. And then ultimately as well, underlying all of that, there is the one thing that brings them all together, which is the football. And I suppose, again, as I mentioned previously, showing that emotively so people can really get passionate and excited about what they're coming to see has a big impact across all those segments, a little bit more holistically, which is a benefit to us. But yeah, it's really just about managing the channels, understanding the different segments, and then meeting them with the right message at the right time. Every marketer's kind of textbook kind of response, I suppose.
And then where do you get that information from, Joey? Where do you get that data? Like, I know you conduct kind of regular surveys and you've got access to data. Is it just you're pulling stuff from social media, or you're pulling stuff from their profiles on your website and your season ticket holders? Where do you go to better understand your audience? Like, how do you understand that kind of customer fan personalization, and how can other clubs kind of find out more about their fans and implement those things in their own campaigns?
Yeah, it's a beast to tackle. There's so much data out there these days. It's about where don't you go, I think, sometimes, because you can go down so many paths. We've got and this is testament to my predecessors and colleagues at Cardiff. We've got a really, really strong customer journey in terms of data capture, so that we can obviously understand the fans as much as possible. We've, this over the course of the last year, really, we've just been focusing on how we can utilize that and try and promote and make the experience better for fans on the back of it. But yeah, it comes from a host of various different data points, from when people are buying tickets, where they're data capturing all of their information around their demographics and where they're from, etc., to understanding web behavior on Google Analytics, and the whole new world that we're living in with GA4 recently, to looking at what people are responding to on social media, what they're doing, and then as you mentioned, the surveys, getting that actual qualitative feedback from fans directly, so we can really echo their voice in the club internally, so that their points are getting heard and are being utilized really in what we're trying to do with our marketing and wider club efforts, to drive a good experience for them at the end of the day. So yeah, there's a lot of information. I think for clubs who are smaller clubs who are looking to pursue it, it is a minefield. There's a lot out there, but the value that you can gather from it is invaluable really, and it really sets us all up in terms of our strategy and what we are trying to achieve. I think, starting, you've just got to look at ultimately the fan. You've just got to understand them, try and understand what they want, and if you look after your customer, they'll look after you. And I think that's what everybody wants from this kind of mutually beneficial relationship that we've got in sports.
Riverside Sports Bar with Welsh sports fans is Newport's premier sports bar and has been voted best sports bar at the Welsh Hospitality Awards. With a range of huge TVs, an incredible food menu with burgers, dirty fries and much more, including vegan options, it is the place to watch sport. Visit www.riversidesportsbarnewport.com to find out more.
There's a danger, isn't there, of assuming you assume what the average fan, what they like, what their match day experiences are, and sometimes you can suffer from that kind of collective blindness if you've got a couple of people that think they know, and actually you don't tap into the diversity of the fan base. Like, I know that some of the surveys that you've done over the last year or two, there was a few things that kind of surprised you in there in terms of the Cardiff City fan base. Are you able to kind of share some of those things that you didn't realize until you'd actually got that data?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's quite a few data points that surprise us, and we're always pleasantly, in most cases, surprised every day by our fans in terms of who they are, where they come from, and how diverse the fan base is. I was looking at a data point yesterday, for example, around season ticket holders and just how far-reaching our season ticket holder base is. We've got season ticket holders not just in like the local Cardiff area and into the valleys. They're across Wales, they're across England. We've even got a couple up in Scotland and Northern Ireland. So, there's fans out there who, really want to support the club, and it's surprising sometimes to see that. And when we see that data, it allows us to look at things from a fresh perspective. As you say, we can make more informed, better decisions on the back of that data. And without it, we would be making opinion-based decisions, which potentially could be pushing us down the wrong path. But I would implore anyone who is kind of in this space and is working around marketing and understanding their customer, you've got to use that data to do it.
Exactly. And I think the world's changed so much over the last couple of years with COVID and Brexit and all sorts of things. I think it's too easy to assume that kind of the way it was 5 years ago is the way it is now as well. The world's always changing, and I think you've got to regularly update those data points, haven't you, and kind of keep talking to the fan base, because the world changes, they change, what they want changes as well. So you've got to regularly have those touch points. How often are you doing that? Is it kind of every year that you're kind of checking that data and looking at changes, or is it more frequent than that?
It's more frequent, I would say. So we tend to, depending on the projects that are obviously going on at any one time, we're constantly in the data. We're always looking at those trends. We're always challenging each other internally to make sure that we're looking at fresh ideas and we're looking at new things to try and encourage, that next generation of fan that is coming through. As you say, post COVID and everything that the world is today in terms of digitally, it's changing constantly. You know, we were 2-3 years ago, we were working with Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram as the main 3 social media channels, whereas now we've got one that has exploded onto the scene, which is TikTok. So, you know, in terms of the way people are engaging with our content, with our product and propositions, is constantly changing, and we're always looking at the data to try and better that and make sure that we're meeting the consumer where they want to. What we're supplying the consumer with what they want ultimately.
And I think this is a little bit of a cheeky question from me as a Cardiff City fan. The mood of the fans changed quite regularly as well. And in your 12 months, would Mr. Bullock be your 3rd or 4th manager you've worked with?
Yes, I believe so, yeah.
So kind of with a football club and the changing face of the football club and the changing manager and the changing players, do you see the mood of the fans changing, and then you've got to adapt your strategy accordingly?
Yeah, definitely. You know, as I mentioned right at the start, sport is extremely reactive, and nothing that, you know, we do off the pitch can ever compare to what those players do on the pitch in terms of driving trends with fans and driving that mood. So it is a big influence on what we do as, you know, sports commercial sports professionals. Really, we do rely on it, and we do get heavily involved ourselves ultimately, which is, I think, great for the club and for sport in general. But yeah, it is a massive influence, and we've just got to work around it and roll with it really. But yeah, it's great mood at the club at the moment, and a great win last night. So
absolutely, like the last couple of seasons as a Cardiff City fan have been quite tough. There's been some games I've stood on the kind of Camden and thought, oh my God, where are we going? And then this season, Errol Bullock's come in, Aaron Ramsey's come back, and it's just like a completely different club. In the space of a couple of months, it's gone from what sort of season are we going to have to, hello, we're in the playoffs and we've got a chance here. So it's fantastic to see that as a Cardiff City fan, and I'm sure it's fantastic then to create content and strategies around that, because it's positivity. I'd imagine when it's not so positive, that becomes a much more difficult job. Yeah,
it is. But, you know, as I say, you've got to roll with that. Just if your team in particular isn't performing on the pitch, it doesn't mean that we stop and we don't pursue and try and optimize things for the fan ultimately. So, you know, we work around that. We've got our strategy, and that strategy remains constant, whether the team is performing well or badly. There's obviously the benefit that we see if the team performs better than on the back of it.
Yeah, and I know from some of the stuff we do with the FAW, sometimes if the mood in the Welsh football arena isn't the best, you can pick things out of the kind of history. And we've made a couple of documentaries looking back at different times in Welsh football history, and that kind of helps. It's not so much paper over the cracks, but it's like, if the mood isn't great at the moment, let's look at something else. Let's look at something different. Let's talk about a different time and kind of not dwell on the negatives, because across social media sometimes you can fall into a trap of fans are unhappy and they're all kind of moaning, and it becomes an echo chamber for them to moan. And you can create content which can kind of balance that by looking at something a bit more positive. So I got a bit of a technical question for you now, and kind of CRMs. So with great fan experiences comes kind of fan loyalty. So do retargeting campaigns have a big focus within your marketing strategy?
Yeah, definitely. I suppose there's like 2 points to that question. So yeah, firstly, retargeting, remarketing activity, big part of our strategy, and has worked really well for us over the last couple of months in terms of driving results. Things like abandoned basket functionality when fans are adding to their cart, and then deciding that's not quite the right time that they want to convert, just following up, particularly from an event, event-based approach. It's really important to let fans know that, those tickets might not stay around for long if it's a big game, for example. So yeah, activity like that is really important, and remarketing, retargeting on social media has been really effective for us as well. There's some fantastic things you can do in the Meta Suite these days, and it's great that we can, again, personalize the experience for those fans in particular, just to help them make a more informed choice and not bombard them with too many things when they don't want to be either.
And are you using those readily available tools quite a lot then, like the Meta Suite? So, for example, if there's a grassroots football club or a lower league football club out there, and they're sat there going, okay, you're right, you're Cardiff City, you've got money to spend on these things. Is it complicated back-end stuff you're using, or is it Meta and the tools that anyone can use?
Yeah, to be honestly, it varies depending on the different project and the scale of how what you're working at, really. But ultimately, yeah, for some grassroots smaller clubs who are looking to get involved in that, there are some very intuitive, easy to use platforms out there, Meta being one of them, that you can do these things quite easily. It's very simple to set up. There's quite a bit of a minefield space with regards to compliance and GDPR, but again, there's lots of guides and advice out there for clubs to kind of look at doing this kind of activity.
So do they need a kind of specific CRM strategy or tool, or how, if somebody doesn't have those things, where would you advise that they start if they're looking to improve upon their CRM activity? I
think ultimately it starts with capturing that data and capturing that data in a compliant and I suppose for a smaller club, I would advise as easy to create as possible. But ultimately buying tickets is always one of those great data capture points. But there's so many platforms out there for smaller businesses like MailChimp and various website providers that you can create these simple forms, capture the data, make sure that you've got a secure, simple privacy policy in place that fans understand what you're doing with their data. That would be my advice of where to start, really. And there's boundless routes you can go down from there.
Yeah, I think I've used MailChimp before, and it's a really simple platform and really interesting when you can see who's opened your email, who's clicked what links, and that gives you information about what they're interested in. So that's something that anyone at any level can access and can get the benefit from, really, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. The behavioral data from all of these channels is really important. And, even tools like Google Analytics, which to a new user would sound extremely scary. There's some really good guides in Google on how you can set that up and how you can start to understand how your customers are behaving on all the channels that you're using to reach them. Other tools out there, and I've worked with a couple of other institutions and who work like Swim Wales, and they work with local clubs across Wales as well. So we advising them around other channels that are out there that are starting to open up new functionality for them. So WhatsApp is a great example of that. If you're a smaller club that you've got a small committee that you need to communicate to people and make sure that they're getting the messages, you can set up smaller communities on there. But WhatsApp are starting to roll out a lot of functionality around WhatsApp channel, where you can almost use it like a Facebook feed, really, but you're just getting the direct messages through of the content you want to see. So there's a lot of growth in that space as well.
Fantastic. And we've talked a fair amount about technology and social media and how that helps to reach fans, but it's the content itself that builds the connection, isn't it? It's the story, it's the characters. What are the most important elements of content creation in your opinion?
I think it comes back to a lot of what we said in terms of understanding the customer, the end target, really, understanding your audience and making sure that you're creating the content that they want to see and that it will appeal to them. Again, I think it's also about working collaboratively internally. We work with all the teams in Cardiff City to make sure that what we're creating and what we're sending out as a team is right by the club and is right by the fan base. So I think that's really important to ultimately elevate and make sure that you've optimized what you're sending out. But then also, I think, in today's world, it's again, it comes to the channel, but video imagery is so important these days over necessarily historically copy-led content pieces. It's where the consumer is moving towards, and it's becoming more and more popular. And I think that's why it's important to really focus on those areas and make sure that you, again, understanding your audience and then developing the right content for them.
That's it. And football, as we said, is a fantastic place for creating content. Like we've done loads of stuff for the FAW on Red Wall Plus, where you're diving into that fan culture and telling the story of the fans, or you're telling the story of classic kits. Like nostalgia is such a powerful tool, and football is a perfect place for that nostalgia, because you can talk about a team and everyone remembers seeing that team and what the kind of fashion was and what the music was that was on top of the pops around that era. You can play off all those different elements and all those different senses to kind of tell a story about a particular time in a football club's history, and all that nostalgia comes rushing back for the audience, and they get excited, and it kind of really connects them on the emotive level. What sort of stuff are you looking to do at Cardiff City where you can tap into those emotions?
I think so. For us, if we look, we go back to the data and we understand the audiences. There's so many fans within the base who they literally cross generations in terms of, their children become Cardiff City fans, their grandchildren become Cardiff City fans, and nostalgia plays a huge part in driving that. We always look back at history of our clubs, and we're always proud of that history. But yeah, ultimately for us, it's I'm for example, I'm a Cardiff City fan. My parents were Cardiff City fans, so yeah, it's really about understanding the fan base and knowing where those different audiences are, and allowing them almost those advocacy touch points, really, for them to start sharing that content and those stories with the younger generations, because it will then nurture through that next generation of fan.
That's it. And I think everyone's kind of parents and grandparents have told them about the teams that they used to watch. And back in the old black and white days, kind of they're telling their stories. And now with kind of social media and access to content, you can bring some of those stories to life with fantastic imagery as well, can't you? So I know for a lot of the stuff that I engage with around Cardiff City, nostalgia and some of that older generation will tell you about that team they watched in the 60s or that team they watched in the 90s. And for me, kind of going to the League Cup final down in Wembley and watching Cardiff kind of narrowly lose to Liverpool on penalties, just that season and that cup run just brings back so many memories for me and kind of has a special place in my heart. And hopefully it won't be too long and we'll see Cardiff City back at Wembley and back kind of on the cusp of winning trophies, and plenty more to come with Mr. Bullard at the helm.
Yeah, hopefully, and I'm really excited to see what the future holds.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, James. Thanks for chatting to me. Don't forget to like and share this episode and subscribe to the channel for more content.